Did you know that Cyberpunk 2077 content creators and developers CD Projekt Red cut content from the final game when it was released on December the 10th? Now, that might not really be a shocker to a majority of people because there has been a lot of videos out there and a lot of people talking about the things that they have found that they thought should have been included in the final game. And CD Projekt Red just didn't have enough time to implement all of those final projects and missions and story into the final release of December the 10th, and they didn't want to postpone the game's launch any longer. However, apparently, they will eventually be added to the game, and they're actually talking about a DLC that's going to be coming out in June of 2021. So ultimately, we just have to wait for the game that we are wanting to have for Cyberpunk 2077 for another 6 months. Now, why they couldn't have just postponed it, I would have been fine with that as a game player myself, but that is a completely separate topic. But we want to go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the things that actually are coming up with the information of the June 2021 release of the DLC with the additional content that will be added to Cyberpunk 2077. Now, a brand new post on game FAQs, which has been apparently shared by a CD Projekt Red employee, reveals the mess behind the development of Cyberpunk 2077. Now, obviously, everybody knows that Cyberpunk 2077 experienced a tough and a rough launch this last year in 2020. It's hard to believe that it's already 2021 already, and hopefully it will all be better this year. But it was totally unexpected for fans of the game, especially those who have tried to played on the last gen consoles. It just was hardly playable at all. Soon after launch, CD Projekt Red apologized for the game's poor performance on consoles and promised to fix most of the technical issues by the end of February this coming year. However, it seems that the game's problems are much more than just a simple series of bugs and glitches. Recently, and we're going to dub this person because we don't know who this CD Projekt Red employee is, but it's a user called JoeBuck80, shared a new post on game FAQs revealing the messy situation behind the developmental process of Cyberpunk 2077. Before getting into all the details, I definitely suggest that you go ahead and get all the information with a grain of salt because we don't know if this is actually true or not true. We'll just have to actually see what truly happens, and we can only continue to watch some of the information on CD Projekt Red's website, specifically about Cyberpunk 2077, to see if any of this is actually going to be confirmed officially by CD Projekt Red or any other authorized member of the company. So again, please take that anything that I'm about to talk about going on and have already made inside of this episode that with a grain of salt, because we really don't know what information is accurate or if this is maybe just a fan that's trying to pretend to be a CD Projekt Red employee. Now, according to the post, Cyberpunk 2077 was supposed to have a much larger scale than its current status in the case of the story, gameplay, and even world design in particular. In order to be able to make the launch of the game in 2020, top-ranked members of CD Projekt Red were forced by the developers to cut a ton of content from the game, even the ones that were already promised in the marketing of the game specifically. Now, that is actually relatively interesting in my opinion, just because if we were told that this is going to be promised inside of a specific game, like the wall running aspect, now there's a lot of other things that we could give examples for, and I'm not necessarily going to go over all of the different examples, but they were originally promised to be inside of the game, and then eventually they were taken out of it. So what was actually in the game that was completely taken out? I would actually love to know the percentage behind what was developed, what was supposed to be developed, and what was underdeveloped. Those are just some of the questions that I personally have as a player and as a fan, because I am a fan of Cyberpunk 2077. I thoroughly enjoy the game, but I think that there's a lot of things that just seem that they just weren't well implemented, and they just feel like they were very much short. They just didn't hit the nail quite where it was supposed to. But these are aside from the content from the developers that were forced to remove due to touching sensitive topics. Now, we're not going to really go over those, but apparently the top managers at the company and foreign investors intervened in the developmental process and tried to force their vision over the developers' vision of specifically of the game design, the story, and other aspects of the game entirely. Now, as a company, you should never let investors dictate how a game or any type of product should be finalized. Now, I know that's not how the world operates, but come on. If you're a developer and you're actually making something, you want to have a third-party person telling you how to fix it, then why don't you just tell them to make the game? Because at this point, it's not even your game anymore, it's their game. So get off your backs, investors. You're just investing into the project. That means you support the project that's already being developed, not creating a brand new one in the image that you sees fit. Hope that makes sense to a lot of people out there. But for example, the post specifically refers to a quest that had been rewritten more than a dozen times, and so far, and since one of the high-tier members of the company wasn't feeling it, the quest was eventually taken away from the game completely, but now hopefully it will find its way back into the game post-launch DLC that will hopefully be coming in June of 2021. Now that's really interesting that they had to write a specific quest, not multiple quests, one quest over a dozen times, and then eventually for it to be like, you know, we're not feeling it, so ultimately we're just going to go ahead and get rid of it. Yeah, it just seems, I don't know, we're not feeling it, so we're not going to include it in the game. Furthermore, the post reveals that Keanu Reeves wasn't the developer's first choice for playing Johnny Silverhand. I don't know if you guys didn't know this, but it's actually true. Apparently, Johnny Silverhand used to have a much crazier and cooler personality than his current state, which should have been epic to actually see, because I feel like Keanu, I feel like it did an okay job, but I feel like it could have been, for like the style and the way that it feels like it was written for the character, could have been upscaled a little bit. In my opinion, I feel like it just could have been, he could have been a crazy character, and I mean crazy in a good way. And the developers were thinking of Cillian Murphy as the voice actor for the role. Now that would have been really cool. I would have loved having Scarecrow play a Johnny Silverhand. That just seems epic to me. But Joe Buck 80 reveals that Cyberpunk 2077 used to have a larger story, a deeper transportation system, and a detailed wanted system with the NCPD, but the developers had to cut the content since they didn't have enough time to deal with the technical issues of those systems and those specific missions. Wow, that's just a lot to take in if you really think about it. It's just like, oh my gosh, how much stuff was actually left out of the game or taken away from the game in order to actually make the launch of this. It just seems like, let me just read that again. It was a larger story and a longer story, a deeper transportation system, so like the tracks and different activities being able to get from place to place, because there are the stations for like the monorails and the train system. And then on top of that, there's a more detailed wanted system with the NCPD. Now that I would have loved to see, because I think that would have changed players' interactions with the civilians and even some of the gangs differently in the game, which would have been epic in my opinion. And I really hope that all of these things actually get implemented into the game in June of 2021. Now that being said, it seems that Cyberpunk 2077 is supposed to follow the policy of Hello Games, followed up with a No Man's Sky kind of comparison. So they're basically going to be like, oh, here's things that weren't included that we're going to give to you guys now. Hopefully that 6 months later it's okay. But apparently a major part of the content will be added to the game, like I said earlier, in June of 2021. And the support will continue to be by launching the PS5 and the Xbox Series X versions, and possibly finally delivering on the multiplayer section. Now, I don't really want to talk about too much of the multiplayer section as of right now, because originally it was set and slated for a 2022 release and a standalone game. But hey, if we can get that 6 months earlier, I would love to have a Cyberpunk 2077 online game, because I think that would be absolutely fantastic. But let me know what your guys' thoughts and opinions are down below of this information, because I would love to hear from you guys and what you guys think of it. But that is all the time that I have for today's episode. If you guys did enjoy it, you know what to do. Like, comment, and subscribe down below. It would help me out a lot and is greatly appreciated. But until next time, YouTube, you guys keep doing what you're doing, because you're already doing it, and you guys stay gaming.